Welcome to Manifest This Believer versus Skeptic. I'm Sharon Giroux, your resident skeptic who asks all the tough questions. And with me is Jennifer Neal, our manifesting maestro. Whether you're rolling your eyes or raising your vibration, we dive into all things manifestation, mindset, and energy from every side. Hit subscribe, settle in, and get ready for spirited debates, surprising experiments, and laughter on the journey to creating a life you love. Welcome to Manifest This Believer versus Skeptic. Today we're going to talk about you are what you are, or are you? Really, we're going to talk about when your personality becomes your prison. Hi, Jennifer. I hear you have a very special day today.
It's my birthday.
It's your
Woo! Yep.
birthday.
Yeah, I'm
It's always great
57
to
today.
celebrate our time on the planet, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just thrilled to be alive. Yep, it's great.
And as a friend of yours, I could say I'm thrilled that you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, we have a very interesting topic, and I think it's probably apropos birthdays in some respects, as we always reflect whenever we have birthdays in terms of what comes next.
You asked me earlier what reflections, what thoughts do I have going into this next year? And I said to you, and I said to you again, and I don't know, I can't get it out of my mind. And you're a Trekkie, so you'll get this, Sharon. Like the things that was written into the Star Trek scripts all those years ago, like mobile phones and GPSs and also you know better than me what those things were, but like we hold them in our hands now, right? And so what came first? Was it the vision of the Star Trek? Like what comes before manifestation? It's always imagination. And so I'm always reminded, and as I sit in this 57th birthday, I think to myself, if I can think it, I can have it. If I can think it, if I can hold it in my mind, I can hold it in my hand. And we all have to know that we can have, be, and do anything we want in life. And that's kind of what inspired what I wanted to talk about today, which is what happens if you're completely unaware of the fact that life doesn't need to look like it looks like all the time for you. Do you know what I mean?
So, it sort of sounds like the get off the treadmill kind of perspective. Or I think, as we spoke about this earlier, we're all in this interesting little aquarium, but when you put the fish in a bigger aquarium, the fish grows. Well, we don't always
Exactly.
grow if we're in the aquarium.
Exactly. So, kind of what spurred me onto this topic today was I was sitting with a friend, and this friend said, you know, you can't change your personality. And I went, what? What are you talking about? You can't change your personality. Your personality is your personal reality. So, in other words, the person you are is creating the reality that you see. If you change the person you are, you will see a different reality. You will experience a different life. So, what struck me wasn't so much the statement, it was how final they were when they said it. You can't change your personality. I'm like, oh my gosh, they really think they're stuck in this life.
That sort of brings me to, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, it's kind of true though, isn't it? You are who you are.
No, you're not. You are who you want to be. That's that's the sentence that locks you in a cage. You are who you are. Yes, you are who you are right now, but I can completely change who I am a split second from now. And that change changes my life.
Okay. So give me an idea of where you're going with this.
Okay. So what really made this hit harder for me, it wasn't just this one person saying it. This happened to be a couple married for years. Okay. And I know that not just them, people like them, you really believe you're being practical and you really believe that you're being realistic and you really believe that you know how things are. You know, you're pretty strong in those beliefs. But then up comes this story about parking spot, I have to tell you. So we were going to go out one night and downtown Anna Maria Island, Florida, which is, you know, rammed with snowbirds right now. And we were going to go to the Moose Lodge, which is this like I would call it a legion, but like I guess the Moose Lodge is an American thing. Anyway, it's very popular. It's right on the Gulf of Mexico. The sunset view is amazing. We're going to go down there. And this one friend says to me, the parking, like, good luck getting a parking spot. And I said,
Right, which honestly, depending on the place, that might be true.
"Is it though, Sharon?" There you are. Am I gonna put you in that camp? Anyway, so she says in her real world, she says parking's gonna be a problem. And from my real world, I said, there's always parking. And she said, again, continuing to defend the limitation. I often say, why do you keep defending your limitations? Why do you fight for them all the time? She then says, you don't know this place. I know this place. Parking is going to be a problem. And I couldn't help myself, and I know it was a bit aggressive. I took her by the shoulders and I said, don't you know we live in an abundant universe? There's always parking. And it got a little awkward. And of course, anyway, I have a very strong view about this. I said, okay, well, we're going to go for drinks. I know we'll find parking. And of course, guess what? We found parking. We had a great time. Now we're home. It's all over.
That was a pretty intense reaction for a parking spot.
I know. I can't help it. I'm apologizing to everybody in my life right now because it hurts me when people don't see different options for better, greater, more joyful lives. Anyway,
Okay.
so we both held our positions. And of course, we got parking. We came home. We had a great time. And that was that. But this isn't really about parking. Okay. Like, we're not talking about parking spots.
Okay,
Okay.
so if we're not talking about parking spots, what are we talking about?
Well, you start to layer in the marriage dynamic, or it could be any dynamic, a friendship dynamic, a partnership dynamic, a sibling dynamic, a familial dynamic. You start to layer in the dynamic of the people you hang out with. And what fascinated me was they were reinforcing each other. They were reinforcing this lack based mentality. And so, for example, this always happens to us. Nothing works out easily for us. We have to work hard for everything. That's just how we are. That's just how life is. We're not those kind of people. Those things just don't happen to us. That's not for us. That life you're living, that life that's out there, that's not for us.
That, oftentimes couples might do that because they're building some type of shared language. Although I can also hear some of the always and never, which probably a lot of folks who counsel others say, don't use always, don't use never when you're referring to your partner. But so if they're building a shared language, what does that mean though? Isn't that better?
I guess that is part of their dynamic, of course. But listen, I'll give you another example. I was just chatting with another girlfriend who is coming down to Florida to visit and spend some time with us. And, I said, you're going to have to meet us at the restaurant because we won't be able to get on and off the island in time to come and pick you up. And her comment was, this island traffic is insane! Exclamation mark. In other words, not good, negative, bad, can't handle it. And my response was, welcome to the island. Like everything, there's a different perspective on everything. You can always shift your perspective to find something positive. And when you do that, you attract more positive things into your life. But I'm not, back to your point, I'm not just necessarily talking about shared language, right? I'm talking about shared ceilings. These ceilings that get placed on your life, and then you're completely oblivious to them.
Okay,
So
so here's
go ahead.
something that I'm noticing that I find kind of interesting. And that is, I'm finding that, and I'm not sure if it's your influence, Jennifer, or not,
I'm sure it
that
is. I'm
little
sure it
bit
is.
of lack of patience with the always, never negative language. Like
Yeah.
my level of tolerance for that now is diminishing more and more. I almost want to walk away from that type of language. So, I'm hearing that sometimes there's ceilings that are shared along with language. And as you said, it's not just couples, but it's friendships and maybe even people around you. So, why do people keep speaking around these limitations?
Well, I mean, it becomes the culture of the relationship, right? Like that's part of what they do bond around. But when you both continue to feel the same way, and you rehearse limitation together, it feels safe. It feels like you're bonding. I've often said, be careful about how much you gossip. Instead, direct them to a better landing place instead of getting wrapped up into the drama all the time. It's all negative. It feels stable. Well, this is just how we talk, or this is just the life that we share together. And it feels realistic. I mean, let's face it, both you and I, Sharon, changed our lives completely. We live in different places. We look at different vistas. We see different landscapes now because we decided to change our life. And that scared a lot of people that we left either behind or that watched us doing it.
Right. I mean, I think we changed our aquariums as we've talked about before. So seeing these limitations becomes stable and bonded and realistic, and you want to break out of that. How does your identity frame as a result of this?
Well, it becomes your identity. And then your identity becomes prediction because you start to predict things that will keep your identity the same. You have to keep it the same. So you start to look for experiences, events, and outcomes that will keep you in the identity that you expect. The prediction then becomes perception. That's how you perceive the world. And the perception then becomes your lived experience. But the key is you can change your perception of something in a second. Like, let's talk about the island driving again. One perception could be this traffic is insane. It takes me forever to get anywhere. I have to redo my entire day around getting on and off the island. The other part is I'm living on an island. I get to look out at the Gulf of Mexico every single day. I am living in the sunshine state where I wanted to be. And I am thrilled to sit in this parking because it comes with that experience. And I get to listen to my favorite podcast, Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic, while I'm sitting in the car.
It sort of sounds to me like, much as we want to manifest something fantastic, being in this identity of always and never and this prediction mentality, like you're manifesting that too.
Totally. You are. And listen, I'm not saying that change is easy. I just did a post not too long ago about how I'm living this life that only was on a vision board for many, many years prior to this life I now live. But even though I had the new life, it was uncomfortable. I wasn't used to coming to Florida for the season. I wasn't used to working remotely all the time. I was used to snowy Ontario winters, hunkering down, lighting candles, lighting the fireplace, and I was happy with that too. But even the change you sometimes want takes you a while to become accustomed to. Often people say change is hard, but even good change is hard.
Right. Okay. So if we look at it from, personality or programming, you can't really just reinvent yourself, can you? Doesn't that come across as being fake or inauthentic?
I suppose in how you do it, but is it really fake or is it just unfamiliar?
Okay.
So
So
that
break that down a little bit for me.
Okay, so what if personality, back to personal reality, what if your personal reality is just rehearsed emotional reactions? Okay. For example, the price of things in Florida isn't cheap because of the exchange rate. We have rehearsed that the exchange rate is expensive. We have rehearsed the fact that the Canadian dollar doesn't go very far in America. We have rehearsed this idea again of lack and limitation around exchange rates. So that keeps us stuck as an identity. Instead of saying, I'm not going to pay attention to that anymore. I'm just going to live my life. I'm just going to go about my day. So we rehearse these reactions again to keep us stuck in that spot. If you don't want to be there, stop saying that.
Okay.
We've got really well practiced sentences. The traffic is insane. That's been practiced. That has been practiced. The traffic is insane. And there are also coping strategies. They may have worked one at one point. That exchange rate, it's terrible. Well, if you want to move down to a sunnier state, you're going to have to find a way to get okay with that exchange rate. And again, I'm not saying these
I'm
are
grinning.
easy.
Yeah, I'm grinning to myself a little bit because, I mean, I live on an island and some massive holidays and celebrations. And I do recognize, listeners, that we record some of these podcasts ahead of time. So I'm using what's current to me, but might be a little bit in the future for you. Chinese New Year has just come and gone. We're also now into Ramadan where I am, and 2 million cars have landed on the island, and everybody is complaining about the traffic. And I was just on my Vespa the other
Mhm.
day thinking, look at all this traffic, but I've got my Vespa and I am bypassing all of it, kind of grinning and laughing a little bit about, hey, yeah, traffic's terrible, but not for me.
Well, and great. But even if you were in the traffic, there would be a way to reframe it like, isn't it great? People are coming to enjoy the festivities. What a wonderful place we live in. I don't even have to get in my car to enjoy it. I live in it. There's
Right.
always a way. There's always a way, but you can really use it comes back to awareness. And I think that the whole reason why I'm on a bit of a tangent about this is because we say these things all the time and we don't realize how trapped they keep us. So it's really starting to become aware of, if I want to change my life, what have I been saying to myself all day? What have I been saying to my partner? What do we say about things and money and trips and vacations? And what do literally, what are our words? Because we know that our words become reality. So you can use your own self awareness here, right? So, for example, I used to say, and I still sometimes say, I'm intense, or I'm competitive, or I just said to you, I'm a little bit aggressive or assertive. When I took her by the shoulders, I'm aggressive, I'm assertive. I am. But underneath that, maybe the intensity was a need for recognition. Maybe the competitiveness was always fearing of not being enough or being left out, or, being quick to anger because I feel unseen. So sometimes when you become aware of actually what you're saying about yourself, you are uncovering, if you'll allow yourself to, the reason why. Like, why are you so competitive? Why do you need to be so competitive? Well, maybe it's because you feel unseen. Why do you feel unseen, Jennifer? Why do you feel unseen? And let's talk about that.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't want to be like that
So,
anymore, right?
right. So, look, I can see that there's something quite comforting about knowing who you are, and it can be quite destabilizing to question it. But I also think that, as we start to do the work around ourselves and fundamentally, we learn and we keep learning as human beings. And I think what we often forget is we evolve. And the evolution of who we are is not just how our bodies change and how we get older and how our experience builds. Because one could argue that, on one day I was doing X and the next day I had evolved and had an experience and now I do Y, that could be perceived as a change in your personality, or let's say an enhancement. Let's say you've added an upgrade. Let's say you've gone from, 1.0 to 1.5. It doesn't have to be a complete 360, but it could be iterative. And what I'm hearing you say is maybe we have to give more space to iterating who we are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could not have done even 10 years ago what I'm doing today, and I'm not perfect at it. But now I'm able to look at an argument or a trigger and really look at it and go, why does that trigger you? Other people can do that and it doesn't trigger you. Why does it trigger you when that person says that to you? What is there? Why is that? Because every time I get curious around those triggers, around the things that irritate, upset, there's growth there, which means I get to expand greater and I get to enjoy greater things in my life. It really does come down to that.
So, do you think perhaps that our default mode, i.e., you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is then just a habit because it allows us to coast without being self aware or doing any introspection?
I totally do. I'll tell you, it was a lot easier to coast through my life, being all the things I was in my personality, with no regard for how it affected other people, or bottom line affected me, than to now look at it and go, gosh, I can't believe I said that. I'm going to have to apologize and ask myself, what did that touch in me that was so painful that I had to respond that way? But like, if I can start to figure that stuff out, then I open up that energy and I can use it on other things. And when I open up that space, more abundance comes in. I used to laugh at
Okay.
people that, yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, okay, so if the thesis or the premise of our discussion is when folks say you can't change your personality, how do you dissect that?
Well, I would say you dissect it calmly,
With
because
curiosity.
with curiosity and with, that classic statement, with no judgment. But if that's true, if this is all true, then that means that growth is just cosmetic and the patterns you're in today are permanent. Like, do you really want to believe that? That your situation is going to be like this forever? that your economic situation is never going to change. You're never going to rise higher. You're never going to do more fabulous things. You're never going to have greater experiences. Your emotional reactions today are destiny. I'm going to be quick to anger for the rest of my life, forever. You're stuck with your defaults. I don't believe that. And I don't
Do you
want to
think
believe that.
that's why we have such wonder and fascination with people who do things from the most humble of circumstances and then do something incredible? And the incredible could be to do with intelligence or discovery or health or wealth, what have you. Do you think that's where why we become so enamored with this idea that change is possible?
Think we've become enamored with the idea because we're supposed to grow. We talked about it in one of the other podcasts where, like, you can't stop a tree from growing. You can't stop a tree from changing. You can't stop a tree from its leaves falling off, unless, of course, it's a coniferous. But you can't stop change. You can't stop growth. You can't stop expansion. And so we are meant to expand. But we keep ourselves so small, so stuck because we feel somehow change is outside of us. And yet it's exactly why we were put here on this earth,
So,
right?
what about traits that we think are biologically wired?
Well, they're not. We are born as these absolute, beautiful, clean slates. And we then start to interact with our environment, and that affects our biology. If any of you know who Joe Dispenza is, he will tell you you can change anything, including your biology and your disease and your personality traits that you don't like. Like, I've just finished reading a book called, can't remember the title of it right now, but that's what the whole thing is about, is undoing the bad parts, the unhealthy, the dis-ease, the disease in our body, the traits that we don't love about ourselves, the traits other people don't like about us. So sure, like, temperament exists, but expectation, that's learned. So let me tie that back to parking and maybe we can bring this home. The automatic reaction that is, we'll never get parking. I know that place. We're never going to get a parking spot there. There will never be enough. I'm taking it one step further, right? There's no parking. There's never going to be enough. We are always going to struggle, whether it's for a parking spot or whether it's for expansion in our lives. Those aren't personality traits. Those are rehearsed forecasts that we have been saying over and over and over to ourselves, and we've actually started to believe there are no parking spots. So the forecast creates the behavior.
I've got to laugh about this whole parking thing because I have a good friend back in Toronto, and we on Saturdays we also always used to drive around to go to the local hardware store, the big box stores or what have you. And I mean, on the weekends everybody's doing something, and it's insane. And we would always have this conversation before we would arrive somewhere, and it would be, "Well, we're just going to get a Doris Day." And I don't know. I mean, I'm probably not. Uh, aging myself and this concept. But for those of you who watch the Doris Day movies, regardless of wherever it was, she always found the parking spot in front of the store.
Yeah,
Wherever she was going, the parking spot was right there. And every time I would go out on the weekend with my friend, it would be, well, we're just going to find ourselves a Doris Day. And every time we did, we'd say,
we
well,
found
that
one.
was a Doris Day.
See, like, isn't that amazing? But listen, we all
That's so
do
that's
it.
why
And
I'm giggling here.
no, I love that. I'm going to use that now. We're going to find a Doris Day. Like, I love that. But I also don't want to come off as I haven't perfected this, guys. Like, I still struggle too. Like, I just looked at my watch and we've got to get someone to the airport at 4:45, 4 hours from now. And I'm already going, I got a lot to do. I got to get going. And I go, wait a minute, Jennifer. You live in an abundant universe. You got more time than you know
Yeah.
what to do with today. And so, what I'm saying is the forecasts, they create our behavior. For example, this forecast I just said, I got to get going. It creates me to rush, right? And to think that I'm running out of time. So if you think one doesn't affect the other, you're crazy. Like, listen, I will run around today tense. I will scan for lack everywhere. I will be constantly looking at the clock. I will notice inconvenience way faster than opportunity. They're holding me up. I'm running out of time, like tick tock, tick tock. That becomes behavior. And then that becomes self confirming.
Okay.
So what do you do?
So this is a really interesting discussion. And I think we're sort of at a point where, what do you do? What's the solution? Do you start pretending that everything is abundant all the time?
You could. That would be like the perfect answer, but no, obviously no. But here's a couple things. Start to notice your defaults. Start to question yourself. Why am I always here? Why do I always have this? Start to notice your default language, phrases, expectations, behaviors. Number 2, catch your nevers and your alwayses. Unless the always is good, I always find a parking spot. Catch, oh, that never happens. I'm always late. I'm always left out. I'm always left behind. Like, start catching those words. Number 3, maybe ask yourself this: is it personality or is it just a habit at this point? You've got some knee-jerk reactions. I say all the time, and my boyfriend catches me, I'll say, "Well, beggars can't be choosers." In other words, I'm happy with anything. And he'll say to me, "Jennifer, you're not a beggar." Like, "Oh, right." Like, that's a self-limiting statement. I learned it from my mom. I don't mean any harm by it, but
Right.
that statement would keep me in beggar mode. See what I mean?
Well, and I guess it's
Um,
interesting that we don't notice what we don't notice. And often we don't notice is the
exactly.
default, right?
Exactly. That's a default mode for me, and I'm so grateful that I have him because we, whether you like it or not, we point out each other's default modes. Number 4, experiment with new expectation.
So okay, this one is interesting to me. What do you mean by that?
I mean, what if we woke up tomorrow and just played the Doris Day game as a great example? What if we woke up tomorrow and said, okay, universe, show me the parking spots today. I want you to show them all to me. Even if I don't need them in that spot, I want you to start showing me parking spots. Well, guess what you're going to start noticing?
Mm,
Parking spots. So
okay.
we can experiment with this. Have a little fun. Play the what if game. Play, I wonder what would happen if I just opened my, experience up to this a little bit more. Okay.
Okay.
And number 5, let the discomfort happen.
What does that mean? I mean, that doesn't
Well,
sound good.
I can bet you any money when I grabbed my dear friend by the shoulders, which I apologize for my drastic, abundant reaction. I bet you any money she was uncomfortable in that moment. I don't know because we haven't talked about it, but I bet you she was uncomfortable in that moment because I just called her out on her lack mentality. But let that be
Okay.
uncomfortable. Sit with the discomfort and go, wow, I had no idea I was being so negative or lack minded. So it's
Right.
okay, just let that sit for a minute. And then, I
Okay.
guess the most powerful line for me that's come out of all of this is your personality is your personal reality, but only if you refuse to edit it. So you're going to
Got it.
stay exactly where you are, experiencing the same things, unless you say, I want something different. And even that will start your journey off.
Okay.
Okay.
So sounds like we've had this a very interesting conversation as always. So in closing, what would you like to leave us with?
I think the most dangerous thing about limitation is when it feels normal.
Oof. Okay. So maybe the bravest thing you can do then is to question the parts of you that do feel permanent.
Exactly. Like, you're not what you've practiced. You are what you're willing to become. And if you just start asking yourself slightly different questions, I think you can have a different life.
So it sounds like we need to just evolve with a little bit of curiosity.
I like that.
Okay, Jen, thanks very much. It was yet another great episode and a great chat. I'm wishing you all the best to have a very, very happy birthday and enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you, friend.
Thanks for tuning in to Manifest This Believer versus Skeptic. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend, believer or skeptic. And don't forget to leave us a review so others can join in the debate. Plus, check out Jennifer's TikTok account, Manifestation RX, where she writes daily prescriptions for manifesting your dreams. Think practical tips with a dash of magic. We love hearing your questions and stories, so tell us what you're manifesting or questioning this week. Until next time, keep an open mind and maybe manifest a little magic.